when the new generations of people grow up and they kind of they look back at what we were doing at this time, we will not be painted in a great light unless we're really actively trying to mitigate the effects of our actions today. Because you can imagine, I mean, today we look back at what our ancestors did and we say, well, how could you possibly do that? How could you have slavery? How could you have treated people in this way? How could you have done that? But just imagine in 50 years' time, and we never really got to grips with this situation. And the planet has warmed up and cities are underwater and millions have died. And they look back, and they will look back, and they'll say, well, look at these people who were living in the beginning, the end of the 1900s and the beginning of the 20s. And what did they do? Is our attempt to better inform customers about the environmental impact of their stay, even their entire trip, if we can help in that sense. So we're focusing on the apartments and the kind of sustainability of those apartments. So how much energy do they use? How efficient are they? But also we pay attention to the kind of environmental options in terms of local travel with respect to those apartments. So all of those factors we bring into EcoGrade, and then we try and present everything in a nice, easy to understand display, which we're using as a number of stars. So instead of a 5-star hotel, we can have a 5-star EcoGrade apartment, which would mean it's really great for the environment. It's efficient, doesn't use too much power, it's probably got great green transport options, and even the energy suppliers are hopefully green as well. So that's basically what TheSquare.re is about. Obviously, there's an increased awareness, I think, by everyone of our impact on the environment, and particularly travel. Of course, we all have to travel for business these days, but it's nice if we can minimise the impact when we do so. So whether that's and it's not just business; it's also for pleasure too. You may want to stay, but these things matter. So whether you're an individual choosing an apartment, you want to do something to help the planet, or whether you're an actual corporation who has a much bigger kind of environmental impact to worry about through all your employees traveling a lot, we're trying to provide EcoGrade as a understandable solution that does enable to get a better grip on what your environmental impact would be. Well, why is it important? Well, I hope we kind of know why it's important, really. I mean, we without wanting to be too depressing about it, the planet's not doing so well these days. Yeah. And I guess after perhaps the lockdown of COVID really had a big effect on everybody, and of course on the industry when no one could travel. But after lockdown's finished, I think it kind of made people realize, we do still have to travel, but it really does have an impact. And what is that impact? We clearly have an awareness that when we go somewhere, when we stay somewhere new, it involves energy usage, it has an impact on the environment. But I mean, how do you know what that is? And most of the solutions out there, if you're trying to book a place to stay, I mean, there's no information at all, really. How would you possibly know what your impact was? So that's why it's important, and that's why we felt we had to do something, because the Square wants to lead the way in this area. So why shouldn't we be the kind of pioneers in really providing an accurate view? And I use the word accurate deliberately, because we've actually spent quite a lot of effort on this. Other people in the market are now sort of introducing approximate figures here for those factors I was talking about earlier. But really, most of them are pretty accurate. Most of them are kind of, oh, well, a one bedroom has this much of impact, a two bedroom has this much impact. But when we look at the data, and we have looked at the data, it really matters what kind of building, where it is, the behavior of people inside the building, and all of these different things really matter a lot. So we've tried to be accurate with this. We spent months and months and months, probably way too long, poring over every possible data set that we could get and doing all kind of analysis. And we've installed smart meters and all the pumps that we can. When we provide our EcoGrade, we want it to mean something. It's not some vague, fluffy, oh, well, we're just giving this to you because you want to hear it. We actually want to give you real information so that you can make informed decisions. So that's why I think this is an important thing that we're doing. And I guess that's perhaps a distinguishing feature of EcoGrade compared to others. We're trying to do it properly. We're not greenwashing here. We're trying to do it properly. Well, I think it's this word accuracy. We really try and present real information here to people who want to see it, and we spend a lot of time making sure it's as accurate as we possibly can. So we look at every source of information we can find. We're getting databases from all kinds of areas. But we make sure this data is quality data. So we're using government approved data. For example, when we look at the efficiency of apartments, is based on the EPCs. An energy performance certificate is conducted by a certified surveyor who's trained to figure out where all the different bits of insulation are, the lighting and heating, and is it on the top floor, on the middle floor of a block, and all these different. So an EPC report actually has a lot of really interesting data behind the scenes, and our computers are able to connect to that raw data and extract a lot more information than you might normally see in that simple certificate. So we make use of that. We make use of a lot of information about the availability of green transport, whether it's electric cars or scooters or underground trains, even ferries, all of the proximity of all of these different options we measure to the address of the apartment, and we factor all of that in. We worry about tariffs that the energy suppliers are on, and the energy suppliers themselves, to see are they green tariffs. So we factor all of that in. And yeah, we try where possible to look at genuine energy usage. So if we can, we'll install smart meters and have actual meter readings. So all of these factors, it's real data. Where we absolutely cannot get that information, then we won't just wave our hands and guess. will actually try and find the closest similar property. Often it might be a neighboring property, so it might be the one next door. Expanding its remit. So, you know, we started in London, then we went to England, then we've gone to Scotland and Wales. Then we've moved to Paris, and then the whole of France, and then we're looking at Switzerland. So we're trying to broaden it out. If we can, we'll do the whole world. But you know, that's tricky because every country has a different set of data, and sometimes access to that data is difficult. And actually, even the data sets, you know, they're all in different languages, and that can make things a challenge. So we have to have, we've got to translate all this stuff and make sure we understand it. And each country may measure subtly different aspects of buildings. But yeah, broadening it out would be great. When the new generations of people grow up, and they kind of, they look back at what we were doing at this time, you know, we will not be painted in a great light unless we're really actively trying to mitigate the effects of our actions today. Because you can imagine, I mean, today we look back at what our ancestors did and we say, well, how could you possibly do that? How could you have slavery? How could you have treated people in this way? How could you have done that? But just imagine in 50 years' time, and we haven't really, we never really got to grips with this situation. And the planet has warmed up, and cities are underwater, and millions have died. And they look back, and they will look back, and they'll say, well, look at these people who were living in the beginning, the end of the, you know, 1900s and the beginning of the 20s. And what did they do? They just kept on flying around, having a lavish lifestyle, didn't care, did nothing to help. What awful people they were. You know, that's how we will be regarded, unless we actually come to our senses and think, oh, look, we actually can do something. All of us can do something. And let's just think about it, just pay attention. So yeah, we still have to travel, but we can minimize these things. We can minimize the impact of our actions. And so why shouldn't we? So yeah, I think, you know, I don't want to discourage people from traveling, because it's a great way of becoming a better people and having a broader understanding of our world around us. But let's not destroy the planet as we do it. Look, this is a kind of global crisis, really, isn't it? I mean, we've had COVID, we still have wars, we have all these other awful things going on. But that ultimately, those things we can kind of get a grip on if we're sensible. The planet, it's our single life support system, and you know, we're not going to be able to go to Mars here. We're not going to be living on the moon. Those solutions are not viable. We have a single planet, and we've got to look after it. And as the changes to our environment are becoming ever more evident every year, you know, every year we break temperature records, we have worse storms, we see massive climate disruption to the countries around the world. So inevitably, businesses have to respond to this. Inevitably, the whole business world is going to have to swing over from selfish money making to what's sustainable. And I don't just mean sustainable for the planet, I also mean sustainable for their own businesses. Because frankly, it is not sustainable being a business. You cannot stay in business unless you pay attention to these issues, it's just not going to be viable. Either the nasty resources that you're exploiting are going to run out, or more likely, all your customers are going to go away, because actually we all realize now we've got to do something. So businesses have to pivot, they have to change the way they operate, and they have to incorporate sustainability in its core parts of what they do. So I'm a member of the Commercial and Residential Group, which is helping to create new UK building standards for to do with sustainability and energy efficiency. So we're actively discussing how best to measure and then put in place targets for embodied and operational energy in buildings. So embodied is the energy, I'm sure you know, but I'm just saying anyway. Embodied is the the carbon that is part of the structure of the building, and operational is that carbon that is used when you use that building. We're trying to hopefully in the next 24 to 48 months we'll have proper new building standards for all new buildings built, and will be applied retrospectively to all existing buildings as well as targets, such that all buildings in the UK will have to be meeting these sustainable targets. And these are being created in response to the government's net zero pledges. I'm a professor at University College London. I also consult for Autodesk. I've been a visiting professor for Autodesk for some time. We also focus on net zero buildings. It's one of their research things. I'm helping with that too. But yes, as part of my research at UCL, we look at the use of the latest technology. So I focus on AI and advanced computing technologies, which we use for all kinds of different applications. Everything from trying to understand how biological systems work to improving our technology in robotics.